I think it's worth pointing out here at the onset that honeybees, the purpose of this panel, is a subset of the issue of the health of our ecosystem for pollinating insects and birds. So keep that in mind, because we're going to talk. Our panel here is going to each speak for 5 to 7 minutes. We have lots and lots of time. So we want short ones. You can tell their story, how they got involved in this sort of thing. I want you to be thinking about questions that you have, either from the film or from what you hear our panelists speak about. So anyway, keep in mind that the honeybee issue is a subset of the bigger challenge that we face. Our first panelist here is Jeffrey Maddox. We're back to buildings. He's a professional beekeeper and trained the family of wildlife rehabilitation, and is kind of dedicated his life to ecosystem restoration. So, Jeffrey, you can take the floor. It's all yours. It's all you need.
Sure. Just so happens I was at a conference in mid-July with Dennis Van Engelfort there, so the researcher you saw on the slide. Both what the narrator said and what Drew said is true. Although honeybees are the celebrity insect that everybody's focused on, they're a small part of the native pollinator landscape that we need to be looking at. Fortunately for honeybees, since they produce an income for us and they're manageable, they're better tended than the native pollinators and the other things out there. So, as a beekeeper, I can go to my bee hives and I can split them out and I can make more bees. So, if we're taking losses for whatever reason, I can help to rebuild the honeybee population. Nobody's doing that for the sweat bees or the bumblebees or the leafcutter bees, the mason bees, and all the other pollinators we have. They're also talking about bats and beetles and all the other bees. Bottom line is our world's more toxic than using way too many chemicals, way too many plastics. And when you get right down to it, the base reason for almost every environmental problem we have is too many people. We can address chemicals, we can address large ag systems and their methodologies, but there's not much we can do until we start to cut back our population. Remember in college, one of the scariest things we ever heard is they said the solution to pollution is dilution. It really doesn't matter what your pollution problem is. If you dilute it enough, it's no longer a problem, you know? And basically the pollution in the earth today is us. So we need to dilute us a little bit and get rid of a few people. But, yeah. Her list, I mean, go down the list. I agree with her, right? So, the other thing they said in the film was this problem has happened with the pollinators in a dark way had kind of a silver lining for it because it put us on the map. Nobody was really paying attention to bees and beekeepers or pollinators too much until we started telling you that your almonds were going to triple in price because we didn't have enough bees to pollinate almonds, or your avocados, or your lemons, the things that don't grow here locally that we have to ship in from someplace else. So the national awareness of pollinators and how they are the canaries in the coal mine and are going to knock us down is helped. It's made environmental awareness a little bit better. We're happy with that. So, as beekeepers, we're doing okay. There are more bees in the world and in the U.S., honeybees, than there ever used to be. But that's because we can take care of them and manage them. Nobody's managing these native pollinators. All of them are just a symbol of what level of degradation our environmental systems are having right now. We need to address that degradation, not necessarily the honeybees
thank you. We want to make this as much interactive as possible, but I'd like to go ahead and have each of our panelists speak. Jesse Hallmark, if you go next, you're a master naturalist, the education outreach, and retired educator. So if you would like to tell your story.
Sure. So I grew up in California and hiked the hills of California looking for native plants, trying to transplant them. They don't transplant well when you're a child. They don't transplant well when you're an adult. But it made me realize the environment around us is so important and what our responsibility to the environment is. And I want to read what I call a land ethic, because that's what Aladay LLC called it in his Santa County Almanac. And I want to read what he said because I don't have it in memory. He said that the land ethic enlarges the boundaries of a conventional community to include the natural world. For example, soils, water, plants, and animals should be considered a part of your community. To follow the ideals of land ethic, one needs to think of the land or the ecosystems as something that receives ethical attention rather than seeing ecosystems as a property. And the land ethic changes the role of Homo sapiens from conquerors of the land community to a member of the land community. I'm not sure we're overpopulated. I think we're over materialistic. I think that we think that if we get 300 bushels per acre, that's a good thing. But we're storing corn now. We don't need to store more corn. That's not part of what is going to solve the pollution issue on the planet. Aldo Leopold also had something similar to the golden rule that he said he felt we should do unto nature so as to respect the biotic community, a community that includes ourselves. I work with the urban outreach of the Master Naturalists, trying to educate groups and school children. One of the schools that I went into last fall, I was talking to the Green Committee teacher about putting up native pollinator houses, and we have some that you can purchase, some that are relatively inexpensive. This one came from Aldi's, of all places, and they did have a few left the last time I was there, but the different native pollinators have different needs. And so when I was talking to the instructor about the fact that we could come in and have the children make pollinator houses to hang in the schoolyard, in the garden yard. These also are different home sizes for different native pollinators, or you can have a cedar wood. She said, "Oh, but the safety issue of them getting stung." And I said, "Well, a honeybee might sting if they're aggravated, and a sweat bee might bite if he gets pinched in your clothing, but butterflies don't sting." And so it's an education process. And so the Urban Outreach Committee of the Master Naturalists, who are volunteers for the Missouri Conservation Department, we go into classrooms or to garden clubs to try to help educate the population as to native pollinators using native plants. And so I've kind of come full circle with trying to plant native plants and transplant them in my yard and my environment.
Thank you, Jesse. Next, Kelly Eugene, if you would speak. Kelly's a manager and she's been very involved in helping start and the flourishing of the Springfield Community Gardens.
About 10 years ago, I noticed that
Bigger boys, teacher boys.
I don't have teacher voice. I'm trying to develop one. I was always a librarian. So it's different. Okay. I have been working for a while in community gardens. I was also a small farmer. I grow food all my life. So I've seen the progression of destruction. And tend to overuse anything. If it works, great, let's just add some more to it, you know? And the thing about
Okay,
inflation
I've got a few things to announce. First thing is,
yes, that food is safe
Wellspring
because
is getting
every
ready
time
to
you eat that
do
food, you're not gonna
free
eat enough.
chair massages.
Yay!
Yay! From 2 to 6,
I
we've
just
got
read an
several
article this
people over
morning
here.
about a
We're
doctor
ready
who
to
did a
have
study
a lap.
because he moved from California
Anyway, you're up here at the front,
Iowa.
towards the front door.
And we looked
There's
at
several young
was
ladies
so much
over here just waiting
in Iowa
to help
in
you
Colorado.
relax and
Decided
feel
to start
good.
looking
So come on over and get a chair massage.
a lot of it came from pesticide use.
The other thing is,
And one of the things they're looking
the
at
food
now
truck
is
out
the
front, let me know
markers
that they are
that follow
smoking
that
some shrimp for everybody.
child
So if you like smoked shrimp,
and
they've got some out there. It's a barbecue, and they have barbecue different things out
So,
there. Food
I
truck.
work with a lot
Out
of
the front
different
front
issues
door.
because it's
They're only going to be there until about 3 o'clock, and it's 2 o'clock now, so if the belly's starting to get grumbly,
you know that
and
New
you
York
want
City
something to
is the
eat,
world's
hurry on
biggest
out front and
desert in the world.
get some barbecue or some smoked shrimp.
It has
We made one
no
batch already,
supermarkets
and
in many
it went
areas
really fast,
for
so
miles.
we made
And so
another
people
batch, which
depend
will
on
be about
small
15
convenience
minutes.
stores which sell white bread, sugar treats, all the things you don't need. That's like an apple. It doesn't work. So I started working with food insecurity, especially here in Springfield. I saw a real issue with
Here's one more
there's
thing.
credit cards.
We're going to do a couple of drawings.
And I noticed
Vendors, if you'd like to promote your food even more, you can make a
and that's when I
donation,
noticed
take it up to the registration desk, and we will do a drawing, and someone will get it. And they will know more about you and
so
everything else
my
that
focus
you're
at this
doing
point
with them.
is reestablishing
And
habitat.
Dylan does, she
To
brings
bring
something
those
up front, put
pollinators
in
back, whether
the,
it's basic
drawings, and we can.
butterflies, hummingbirds,
First thing that we're
whatever.
watching
I'm
is
trying to reestablish those habitats
from
in
an
parks
owl.
and in school gardens. So that we can bring those natural pollinators back. I don't think kids are work.
She donated
I'd rather these guys that do very well and that good. So that's where those security issues are back to that, and a lot of it goes back to the story.
So we're gonna draw it out first.
Story. You know, when I started farming, I say this, and people look at me, I had soil, I had really good soil, I had healthy soil. Now, we have to build healthy soil.
Okay, the winner is Mary Whitman.
So we don't
Mary, who just was, body relaxing nap code. I'll bring it over to you here in a minute.
Our next and last panelist is Brian Kevin. Brian is an IT professional at the old SMS here in Springfield. He's living the dream, living on 10 acres north of town, recording woodland and prairie. So, Brian's also very involved with several not-for-profit groups like the Missouri Prairie Foundation. Brian?
Thank you, Drew. So, the way I'm involved in this group is primarily one word that you remember for me is habitat. And Shelley talked a little bit about it, Jesse talked about it, and Jeff talked about it too, about habitat for native bees, native pollinators, and organisms of all kinds. And when I first got involved with the Prairie Foundation about 20 years ago, the Prairie Foundation's primarily goal is to preserve native prairies that have been unplowed and mainly hay generations. And they've done a really good job with that. They recently got more involved in what's called the Grow Native program. The Grow Native program is kind of bent on getting folks to plant native plants in their flower gardens and in areas around their house and so forth. And habitat is so critical for not just pollinators, as we probably mentioned just briefly in this film that these guys have talked about, but also all organisms. And it struck me, I read a book called Bringing Nature Home that talked about how much insects that feed on native plants feed the rest of the food web. And this is obvious, but when you think about it, there are so many insects that birds especially depend on to feed their young.
seeds as adults, those birds are out catching insects and feeding their young. So that is so critical to any raising of native birds, and of course we all like native birds in our yards and so forth. So everything's connected. So that habitat is so critical. So one of the things that Grow Native works on is trying to get people to plant native plants, even in their yards and in their gardens at home. It's not about prairies as the Prairie Foundation protects. It's not even about the rainforest or some of the big conservation areas that our state parks you may have been to. It starts right at your house, right in town, where you can plant more native plants to feed that food web that starts with insects, goes up to birds and other animals. And it's so important that we do that. And what I have noticed, I have an agricultural background, so I grew up on a farm. I farmed when I was a kid. My grandfather grew crops and cattle. And what I've noticed over the past 30 years is, what they talked about this in the film, the disappearance of the small farms and small patches of crops. And between those small fields, there were fence rows, and in those fence rows, there were native plants. Well, the thing that's happened with that has really changed that very imperceptibly, very slowly, year by year, is those fence rows get pushed out, and the tractors get bigger, and the fields get bigger, and that habitat that was once in between those fields is now gone. And maybe there's a little bit along the roadsides between those big farms, but most of that even is disappearing. One of the big challenges with the disappearing roadsides is we mow our roadsides constantly, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 times a summer. And native plants cannot withstand that. It's not sustainable. What that does is it brings in plants that are adapted to that overgrazing and that mowing, and those are typically non-native plants. One of the things, another big one that I'll talk about is invasive plants and non-native of all kinds. One of the theories behind why non-native plants and invasive plants are so successful is the fact that they don't have native insect predators in this country. So you look at something like an oak tree, a white oak tree can sustain over 400 different species of insects that feed on it. Whereas some of these non-native trees we have, like Bradford's hares, which are horribly invasive and sold at every nursery store, any box store, big box store, Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot, all of them sell these Bradford hares that go out, have half a dozen insect species that can feed on them. And they just cannot. And being invasive, they have a competitive advantage against the native plants because they don't have the insect predators on them that the native plants do. So us as homeowners and gardeners and so forth, sure we want to grow our tomatoes and our corn and our vegetables and stuff to eat, but when it comes down to plants that we want to enjoy just for the beauty of them, native plants are the way to go. And that's why I'm here today to kind of round up what these guys are talking about. One other thing that I'll stop with and turn it back over to Drew is, does anybody know what the #1 monoculture crop is in this country? They talked about the monoculture crops.
Soybean?
Manicured lawns. The #1 monoculture crop in this country is manicured lawns. And guess what? A lawn has to be taken care of. It takes chemicals to take care of it. You want that nice one species of grass in there. You have to mow it. And guess what? Mowers are pretty much the most inefficient gasoline engine in the market. So contributing to greenhouse gases and so forth. Your lawn is the environment's biggest enemy. So Drew mentioned the 10 acres that I have at my house. I mow a little patch to have a bonfire and to throw a tent up on and to have a garden. And the rest of it, I let nature do its thing. I kill the invasives and the non-natives and let nature do its thing. So that's my passion and that's my fear. So #1, habitat.
Great job, panel. I learned several things right then and have some of my questions answered. I love it if you all would engage in some kind of dialogue at this point. Do you have a question?
Yeah. I have 6/10 of an acre in Springfield that was uninhabited for 8 years. It has euonymus, it has creeping Charlie, it has creeping honeysuckle, lots and lots of both kinds of poison ivy. I mean, it's just totally overrun. How do you manage that without chemicals?
It is a good question, and it's hard because your invasives are adapted to the kind of lifestyle that we have. U.S. comes from a Western Europe lifestyle, and a lot of those plants come over from there. The other big place to get invasive plants is China and Japan because the climate is similar and the habitats are similar, so we get a lot of that stuff. I would recommend if you want to do it without chemicals, I think you need to figure out, start small, and just kind of expand from there. So I think that what you can do is, I've had a lot of good luck at my place pulling euonymus. I assume that you're talking about winter creeper. Winter creeper, after heavy rain, you pull it. It takes a lot of effort, and you have to stick to it. You can pull it up and start moving out from there.
I spent 27 hours pulling the euonymus about this far around one tree. 27 hours of grueling labor, and it still tries to come back. So you're talking 6 10. It's like insane.
We've had some really good success with using what I call the dragon torch, the propane. Euonymus doesn't really respond to even herbicides because it has a wax coating that the herbicides won't penetrate. We haven't tried melting that wax and hitting them with herbicides. Probably it would work, but for us, we've just been hitting it with the dragon's breath, and it just takes it back. And it comes back, but it's really easy at that point to pull it up because it's not as big.
So you use a torch.
Jeff, did you have something to add?
Yes.
Well, there's a lot of physical management, cultural ways you can attack it. It takes a lot of elbow grease. There are also more environmentally safe chemicals you can use. When you get down to it, water's a chemical. But we're trying to avoid the synthetic manufacture of herbicides and pesticides. So soapy water, the vinegar, salt solutions work well for some plants. Some of the things like euonymus do have too much of a waxy cuticle. But when you're dealing with even some of the native things like poison ivy that you may not want there, the salt vinegar solution works great. And then what happens is
You can't go 10 feet in my property without running into poison ivy.
right.
I have 9 contractor bags that I pulled that you can't get rid of. You take it to landfill, they're going to make mulch. I won't do that to anybody.
We leave ours in the sun to cook.
I beg your
We
pardon?
leave it in the sun to cook. Eventually,
What about goats?
Yeah.
I think the bottom line is there's a lot of solutions.
More time, quick.
Right.
It's a long term.
Yeah,
When you get that winter creeper and tummy stuff, it's a long term management deal.
and some people may not know that winter creeper only, it'll run, but it reproduces as soon as it goes up. When it goes up, it blossoms and berries, and then the birds eat the berries and spread them, and that's why you end up with such a lot of culture.
Maybe this will help. I once had a very wise man tell me, if you want to be happy for a little while, get drunk. If you want to be happy for a long time, fall in love. If you want to be happy forever, take up gardening.
Thanks for turning, did you have a comment?
Vinegar solution, I've used vinegar, vinegar salt solution.
It's an old recipe. It's basically salt water with some vinegar and a little soap. Soap acts as a surfactant and helps spread it. But when you glyphosate Roundup is basically salt solution. They just made it and hyperactivated it so it's taken up better. But you can go with a more environmentally safe homemade salt solution. It doesn't have the added synthetic chemicals.
And I've sprayed it with salt and vinegar so many times, and it just keeps coming back.
As a person who spent almost 20 years in the field doing
Luckily, I live in a neighborhood where my neighbors don't protest, and my yard isn't real visible from the street, but my yard is wild. It's unacceptable for Springfield.
Well,
Just
now
my
you got
neighbors don't
a
care.
perspective that we also need to change. Like he
I
said,
totally,
lawns
I totally agree.
but
Of
You know,
water and nutrients, they provide nothing to the
and
environment.
morale and everything else they suck up, but yet your neighborhood will complain because you're bringing down the property value because you don't have any lawn. That's a perspective that needs to change.
So do you have any native plants at your place, or is it lots of trees, or do you have
Well,
poison native?
I have 3 big silver maples. I had sassafras, but the utility company destroyed my entire backyard. All the bushes and shrubs and everything, they just wiped it out. But I have a lot of stuff that I have no idea, I'm still trying to identify, because I weed eat around anything that looks interesting, and I have a lot of things that are interesting looking that I have no idea what they are. So,
Usually restoration work starts with an inventory where we go in and we look at what we've got, flag the uses we've got, we might get somebody to take a look at it.
I would love to.
Yeah, Brian, you mentioned native plants. Where I'm a West Coast transplant. Where can I go find a list of native plants that I can put in my yard that would?
Great question. I mentioned Grow Native.
Mm-hmm.
Go to grownative.org. There's a list of basically nurseries that deal with native plants.
Okay.
They'll sell you native seed. And the important thing with that is to try to get local if you can. So talk to the people who are there. There'll be some who will sell you native wildflower seed from Wisconsin, which won't grow as well in Missouri if you actually get seed from Missouri.
Okay.
One of the reasons that the Prairie Foundation is involved in this so closely is we actually contracted with some of these vendors to have seed taken off of our prairies and use some of these vendors to do that.
Okay.
So grownative.org is the place to start. There actually are several here in Springfield that'll either help you landscape with native plants or sell you native plants or actually help you get seed.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I tell them who they are?
I'm sorry?
Can we tell them who they are?
Absolutely. If you know.
Yes. Smiling Sun.
You're on film, so go ahead.
Yeah.
You're being recorded. Who is it?
Smiling Sun Garden.
Smiling Sun Gardens. Make sure you catch that.
And then Ozark Soul.
Or Ozark Soul.
And Ozark Soul, I know, is at the farmer's market. At the mall.
I have a question about your farmers markets, if you know later.
Check his Facebook page to
Okay.
see, because they'll go to different places, but, and then, both of them have
Okay.
Facebook and website.
There are at least 2 native plant sales. There was one out at the Nature Center and the Botanical Center. Both had native plant sales throughout Asia.
They have the Nature Center have the same sale in the fall and the spring.
In Hickory Hill Elementary, they've got a good program there for native plants. There's sometimes native plants that are sold at farmers markets.
I would caution everybody though, when you go to garden centers, they don't know what native plants are. Do your homework.
And there again, you have a big box store like Lowe's and Home Depot, they get their inventory from some big nursery shipped in. So yeah, even if it's a native plant, even if it's native to Missouri, it's probably not from Missouri. It's going to be from somewhere else. So it's just for plants that you put in your gardens, I would really go.
I would like to expand. We do know
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. All about the bees. Now, I don't know the quality of this video yet, but I will check it. If it's not good, I'll try to do something else, but I will do a podcast tomorrow morning discussing everything about this little presentation that they made today. Once again, we are at the Springfield Kerak Shrine Temple. Have a good day.